organizational psychology and the master's in business psychology at the University of East London. And but my career, to be honest, my career was never related to business psychology. And my career has always been like that, all over the place. Most of the roles that I've had in the past were related to management. And in fact, this is what my first bachelor's degree was in. It was in business administration, but I always had this urge in me. I wanted to help people. And this was since I was very little. I was 6 years old when I told my mother that I wanted to become someone who would help people. And in my mind, to me, the best idea was for me to become a doctor. But very soon I realized that I wouldn't be able to do that because I was too empathetic, and basically I would faint if I saw someone's blood. So I decided that I could help people in different ways. For example, if I became a psychologist. Unfortunately, my mother dissuaded me from that because when I was little, she used to tell me that I wouldn't be able to make both ends meet. So I listened to her, and I did a bachelor in business administration. I became a manager in different organizations. I was very well paid, but I didn't like it at all. And what I felt inside, deep inside, was that I wanted to do something more meaningful than that. And money wasn't a motivator for me. I was earning a lot of money, but I wasn't happy at all. So, what I decided to do was to study psychology. And then I completed four other degrees just because I couldn't make up my mind on what kind of psychologist I wanted to be until this happened, until I found business psychology. So when I found business psychology, I could finally relate, marry business and psychology and help people all over the world. So at least for me, this is my vocation, and this is what makes me very, very happy.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
My
Shall
pleasure.
I, shall I go shall I go
Yes,
next?
yes, please.
So, well, equally, I have a very convoluted route to get to where I am now. Now, at the University of East London, I'm teaching on the BSc counseling. I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist, and I'm also the course leader of a distance learning MSc in humanitarian intervention, because again, it's the area where I work in terms of research and psychosocial project. But the background is quite different. I am obviously Italian, as you can tell from the accent and the name. So I did my first studies there. My first degree was in pedagogia, so education, pedagogy. But again, because I didn't know what I really wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with people, but I wasn't really clear. And I come from a family where everyone is a scientist or a medical doctor. So my desire to do something more relational was seen as something very odd and not very something quite very strange. So I started with this degree in education, and then through that I got a scholarship to the UK in psychology, because the specialization during my degree was in developmental psychology. I used to really love working with children, and so I started with postgraduate studies in the UK, and then that led me to do a PhD in counseling and psychology. And I started to see very much that the path of the clinical psychology, so working as a therapist or as a counselor, was really appealing, and I really liked it. But before I was able to become a clinical, a counselor and a psychotherapy, again, many years passed because I had to do many accreditations, and really it was at times I felt very demotivated and thinking why I didn't do this in the first place. I was looking at friends of mine that were going in a very linear path, saying this is what I want to do, and they were just going in a very linear way, whereas I was going all over the place, a bit in UK, a bit in Italy. So at times it was very difficult emotionally, and I thought I will never get where I want to go. But then finally I was able to get the qualification in Gestalt psychotherapist, although in my job I was still working as a researcher in education or developmental psychology. So it wasn't really, I wasn't really able to match the clinical with the research. I was able to do that quite recently, in a sense, 10 years, 12, 15 years ago, to start be able to get a post in a university where I started to teach finally counseling and psychotherapy. And in parallel, what also I always wanted to do was to do something in the humanitarian sector. This was even before wanting to do psychology. This, a bit like you, Sonia, was something that I used to say when I was very little at school. My written composition was, when I will be an adult, I will go into low-income countries and work there. And that really seemed to be a very far away thing. But a number of coincidences in life. I went to a conference. There was a workshop in psychology of emergency. I attended that. I thought this is actually what I want to do. So I attended a postgraduate certificate in psychology of emergencies. And I started to work a little bit with the Red Cross. And so anyway, a step after the other one, I was then able to start working in Afghanistan, in countries in war. And I finally was able to combine the clinical aspect, so counseling skills, training, with pedagogia, because I started to design training, intercultural training, and all the things that you need to think to make a training suitable and sustainable in culture that are very different from mine. And so very co-constructed with local practitioners. And that became my other area of passion, where then it happened at UEL, they had an MSc on humanitarian intervention, and I was able to enter into that. So, sorry, very long story to, to show again that it took me a long time to finally get where I wanted to be, but now I'm very happy, and I merge all the different passions.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I think my story is pretty similar. So anyone listening and think, hi, can you hear me? You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes? Okay. So my story is pretty similar and I think any who is thinking, I'm not sure what I want, or I'm not sure what I want to do with the field of psychology. What's exciting is the field of vast. As a chartered architect, I don't practice. Nobody lets me do it anymore. Then I owned a restaurant for 7 years. That was quite a white knuckle ride. And after that, starting a business from scratch is really scary. So after that, I became a business turnaround consultant for people whose businesses were faltering or maybe at risk of folding because of various situations. I then was a president of a charity for 7 years. And I think there's a golden thread that weaves through all that, and probably doesn't look like that. But I think in all of those contexts, what was kind of interesting to me was this notion of strengths, resilience, agility. Being in business takes a lot of agility. Being an architect and working on a building site with hundreds of other people I worked at Canary Wharf, and there were hundreds and hundreds of us. I eventually, sort of in kind of night school in the evenings and the weekends, I retrained to, like Lucia, to be a psychotherapist, and in my case, an executive coach. And I feel like I'm doing something I really love, and it's such a privilege to think about all those different things that I did. And it really is about the, people's personal psychology and their interpersonal psychology. So every day that I go to work, it doesn't feel like work. Sonia's giving that. That makes sense, doesn't it?
That's how I feel as well.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I love
Thank you
every
so
second
much.
of this
Yeah.
experience.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories and sharing what inspires you to teach psychology. Moving on to the next question. Before that, if anyone has questions, please do put it in the comment section and we'll go through it later on. Um, thank you. So the next question is, what should students consider when they are making their decision on their course and university?
Can I start
I
again? Oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
go ahead.
I think I can answer that. Um, Somebody said to me when I was a little kid, just do a degree. Now, you can tell by my accent probably that I grew up in California. I grew up on a farm, and nobody in my whole family, my cousins, my uncles, nobody had ever done a degree. And a family friend took me out for the day, and she said, and I was 6 or 7 years old, and she said, I want to give you some advice. Just do a degree. It doesn't matter what. It doesn't matter what you think you're going to do with it. And so I think that was super good advice. And I think psychology is such a great degree for which to adopt that stance. It's a case of ready, fire, aim. You know, after you start to do the degree, you'll start to figure out how much maneuverability you have within it. And I think that's the best advice I was ever given. I would give that to you as well.
That's wonderful. Can I build upon that? Thanks a lot,
Yes,
Max. So,
absolutely.
in fact, so probably I should start by saying that I completed one of my degrees with UEO, University of East London.
Me too.
So, I started first. Time to show off. So, I have to tell you that I was an international student back then. And it was very difficult for me. 5 degrees, that's a lot. And every time I had to make a very important decision. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of money as well. So, as an international student, I had to think about many things, coming to a different country, deciding on which university I wanted to study with, taking care of accommodation, things like that, let alone language barriers. So, as you can imagine, I'm not a native English speaker, so it was pretty challenging for me at the beginning. But I will tell you why I chose UEO and what made me choose this course in this master's in occupational and organizational psychology. So I was thinking further, I was thinking beyond my studies. So it was not only important to me to do any degree because I already had quite a few. It was important to me to think about my career and what I wanted to do with my life in general. So it had to do with my values, what inspired me, what would make every single day of mine meaningful. So job wouldn't feel like a job, but it would be something that I would enjoy. And I took my time. It took me so much time to make this decision. And I checked, first of all, I decided upon the location because I got different offers from different universities in the UK. I had already made up my mind with regards to the fields that I wanted to study, but I wasn't sure about the university. So I took my time to think about the exact location. That was the first thing on my list. And well, London is London. That's what I can say about that. So to me, London is like the center of the world. There are unlimited opportunities for career success here. And that's why I chose London. And then I had to choose between different universities in London. And I looked at different league tables. And as you can imagine, UEL wasn't very high on the rankings there. And I thought about that and I was thinking, okay, should I rely on these rankings or should I think about something else? So I started approaching course leaders from different universities and having meetings with them. And the moment I met the course leader of the program at UEL was the moment when I made up my mind. Because, this type of people can only be met at UEL. so supportive, so caring, so knowledgeable, such professionals. They're amazing. And I got so addicted to UEL that I can't leave it now. Even though I have job offers from other universities, I can't leave it. So that's my advice. Think about your career. Think about who can get you where you want to get to. And my advice is choose UEL because of all the support that you will get here. You won't get it anywhere else.
I'll just very briefly add on this. I agree with all, and probably my answer is more similar to Sonia in the sense that for me it's very important also to really listen to what is your passion, what makes your life meaningful. And so for me that would be an advice, to really go for what you feel that your life would become more meaningful. So I'm in this, and very existentially, I think for me it's very important.
Thank you for that. The next question. Can you please talk us through the academic support available to students in the School of Psychology?
Can I just lead? I think I can just lead to what Sonia was saying, and her experience of how she felt supported and how really that made her choose to study at UEL. I've never studied at UEL, but I worked in many other universities in the UK and in Italy, and I have to say I've never experienced such a number of different forms of support that are offered to students, from any kind really of individual one-to-one that the different, I guess, members of the staff are committed to offer to the individual students. There are academic advisors allocated to each individual students that offer another kind of support to each of them. There are a number of kind of services that are offered, from well-being or more practical and academic support. My sense is that I've never worked in a academic environment that is so committed really to, that has this as one of the priority, to really make the students experience the best, either the graduate, postgraduate, on campus, distance learning. And because I teach in both, I can really see how there is this commitment to intention to make that possible. So from this point of view, for me, it's also a pleasure to work in this environment, because it's a very pleasant place, being in a context where there is such a dedication to students.
Thank you.
Max, would you like to go next, or shall I say something?
I just really echo what Lucia says. I think it's an absolute explicit commitment. It's enshrined in everything we do, from the mental wealth initiative to the careers first agenda, through to, if you read on our website, Vision 2028, this amazing sort of template we have for individual and collective growth. So I would agree. I think it's embedded into the DNA of the University of East London, and it's always exciting to see how students take that up.
I love this. So I can only echo your words and add something which is specific to what I do in terms of support. So what I can tell you is something that I say to my students at the end of the induction day. I tell them, welcome to my UEL MSc family. And this is exactly what it feels, not only for me and my teaching team, but also for the whole student body. So it feels like a family, because we establish this relationship during the induction day, and then it doesn't finish with the end of their studies, but it goes beyond that. Just like with families, we may go through rough periods, the people may struggle, but we are always there to support each other, always. And what happens is that these relationships this relationship goes beyond that. So what we do is, for example, something that I do on a weekly basis. I have a meeting with different alumni, so I can support them with their job search. I can help them, because I'm a practitioner as well. So I introduce them to my network. I give them advice on whom they can contact, what to say, or if they're already practicing, I help them in difficult situations where they don't know what to do on certain case. So we are always there for our students, not only while they study with us, but beyond that as well. That's why it's a family.
Perfect. Thank you so much. The next question is, what tips do you have for students to best prepare themselves during their studies to be industry ready at the point of graduation? So essentially, the future after their program.
I think that the Industry 4.0 sort of whole conversation that's going on talks about agility and responsiveness to change. In my career, in all of my careers, I saw so much change. And there's a part of me that doesn't embrace change so readily. And then there's a part of me that kind of just sees all kinds of opportunity within change. Each of us on screen here, all the four of us, are what you would call lifetime learners. And it's exciting to try to keep up with all the different initiatives and change that are going on in the world. We listen to the radio and we think it is we're a society in flux, we're a planet in flux, and I think that's my tip, is to embrace change and be agile and see the opportunity within it.
That is
Thank
just
you.
fantastic, Max. Can I add something to that? So, change is the only constant thing in life, that's for sure. And we have to be ready for that, mentally ready for that. I would also advise all students to take advantage of everything we offer at UEL, because we have a fantastic career zone. They offer so many workshops, they have job vacancies, so many of them on their job platform, different one-to-one career coaching services, and so on. Take advantage of everything. This support is here for you. And for example, on the MSc, the master's courses that I lead, we have something called the Business Psychology Lab. And I always encourage all the students to take part in our projects, because this is how they gain this invaluable work experience, and this is relevant work experience before they graduate. And once they graduate, not only will they have a master's degree with a very nice, prestigious university in London, but they will also have all the work experience that they need. And I have a very recent success story because of that. One of our students who completed the master's in occupational psychology also took part in a project in the lab, business psychology lab. And then she graduated and she went back to her home country. And she was immediately hired by Deloitte as an occupational psychologist, even though she didn't have any prior experience apart from the experience from the lab. And they hired her because of her degree with us and the experience from the lab. So take advantage of everything, every single way of support that we offer at UEL. We're here for you.
Yeah.
Right. So what's the last 4 minutes? Um, do you want to add in something, Lucia?
The only thing I wanted to add is that something referring to something that Sonya said earlier that I also use a lot in the MSc Humanitarian Intervention, that is the connection with alumni. So with those ex-students who are already in the field of the workplace, and I often invite them to give lectures on how they are applying what they've learned into their different contexts and professional role. And that can also be a very inspiring and mind-opening tool and resource for current students, because you see actually in practice what other previous generations of students in the same course and the variety possibilities that people encounter after their qualification, or they have been able to create. So that's another resource that I think, again, across courses is very common at UEL, that I think is very beneficial for students.
All right, so there are a few questions in the chat box, I mean, the comment section. So one is from Masa Fatahi. So for someone who plans on studying MSc conversion, will there be any limitations as to what jobs we can choose after graduation? What job options do we have in regard to this?
I guess firstly we should explain what the MSc conversion is actually designed to do. So people who maybe have a degree, but an undergraduate degree that is unrelated to psychology, it gives them a very fast track, accelerated, very experiential opportunity to as it were, like all of us that are on this call here, to migrate into the field and into the professions. And maybe Sonya, you would want to add to that and talk about what people might do with that, having done that.
So I'm afraid I'm not the course leader for this course, so I'm afraid to lie. But I think that you can do quite a lot of things with an MSc conversion course, and you can practice. But if you want to, I can tell you about our Masters in Occupational Psychology, because many people want to join this course because it's also accredited by the British Psychological Society. And many people want to do it, but they don't have any background in psychology. So if you complete the masters, the conversion masters, you can then join the masters in occupational psychology, and you will be fully accredited.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this can be a very nice prerequisite to further education that you plan on doing.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Due to the lack of time, I think we'll have to wrap up, but there is one question. Is there an option to switch the MSc program after starting one within the School of Psychology?
So I have an answer to this, but it depends on whether you are an international student or a home student. So very briefly, first of all, you can easily switch between courses if the curriculum is more or less similar. If it's not similar, then probably if, for example, you've completed 60 credits, then you have to graduate from one of the courses that you're doing with a PG cert and then go to the other course. If they share any modules, then probably you can get some credits for that and you won't have to do the modules. But you have to have in mind that if you're an international student, this can have implications on your visa. So it's important to notice that if you've started the course and then you want to switch to another course, if there are similar modules and you can complete the course within the period of your visa, because before it expires, you will be allowed to do that. But if it means that you will be given a PG cert, for example, or a PG dip for the first master's that you're doing, and then you will start a new course from the very beginning without having any accreditation for prior learning, probably this will not be allowed. So the answer is it depends.
All right. Um, so the questions related to visas and international related queries, please can you email isa@uel.ac.uk. Then there's another question related to the commerce. So, Serene, if you can just, yeah, I'm a commerce postgraduate from India. What opportunity for me in further studying psychology? So change in career, essentially. I think that's the question.
So I guess it would be the MSc conversion course. That would be a really good gateway. That's exactly what the conversion course is designed for someone to see that as a gateway to migrate to a different domain within the overall field of psychology.
Although, you know what? I'm thinking that if you want to do something related to business psychology without having any prior experience in psychology or qualifications in psychology, you can join the MSc Business Psychology course. It's more or less identical to the MSc Occupational Psychology, but it is for students who don't have any background in psychology. So again, there are options.
And
And
I'm just thinking, if you are ever interested in the humanitarian sector, in the MSc Humanitarian Intervention, that is distance learning only, but within the School of Psychology, you don't necessarily need to have a degree in psychology, and you can move into the area of psychosocial intervention through that.
Max, isn't it the same for your program?
Well, I'm trying to think that through. We have a different accreditation body, the British Association for Counseling and Psychotherapy.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I think that these individual cases, people need to enter into dialogue with us, because what really counts is that people have as much agility as they need, as much maneuverability. And I think that probably that person who was asking the question, there'll be 20 other people who are thinking, well, what about me? So I think that each of us needs to kind of really have a clear sense of that. I think what those people who are listening will gather is there are lots of opportunities, and it's really about holding a light up to what they are. And I see that we're over time, but I guess the very best advice is to note the main switchboard number, because sometimes you can get through to somebody who says, well, I know somebody else who can answer that question more meaningfully. And then you'll be put onto one of ourselves, and we can help you map those different training routes out for yourself.
Mm.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Due to the lack of time, we'll have to wrap up. Thank you all for attending this session. And yeah, thanks to the lecturers who took.
Thank you. Have a lovely day or
Bye
evening.
bye.
Thank you.